If you've ever found yourself standing in your kitchen, staring at a carton of eggs, wondering whether they're helping you or hurting you, you not confused, you responding exactly the way decades of bad advice trained you to respond. Eggs have become one of the most misunderstood foods in modern nutrition, not because they're complicated, but because the information surrounding them has been deeply flawed for a very long time. For years, people were told to fear eggs, fear the yolk, fear the cholesterol, fear eating them too often. Some were told 1 egg a day was dangerous. Others were told 2 was pushing it. And then you see people eating 4, 6, even 10 eggs a day, feeling stronger, leaner, and healthier than ever. So what's actually happening here? How can one simple food inspire so much contradiction? The truth is uncomfortable but important. Most of the fear around eggs did not come from good science. It came from lazy science. In the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, researchers were desperate to explain rising heart disease rates. Instead of looking at sugar, processed foods, refined carbohydrates, stress, or seed oils, they focused on one easy target: cholesterol. And eggs, being rich in cholesterol, became the perfect villain. But here's the part that almost no one explains clearly. Those early studies did not isolate eggs as a food. They grouped eggs together with bacon, pancakes, white toast, sugary cereals, margarine, and processed oils. Entire breakfasts were labeled egg meals, and when heart disease markers appeared, eggs were blamed. That's not science. That's guilt by association. Imagine blaming lettuce for heart disease because it was eaten alongside French fries. That's essentially what happened to eggs. The nuance was lost and the headlines took over. Eggs were declared dangerous, and that narrative stuck for generations. But modern research looks nothing like those early studies. Today's science is far more controlled, far more precise, and far more honest. Researchers now separate eggs from ultra-processed foods. They study eggs on their own. They measure real outcomes, not assumptions. And the conclusion has become increasingly clear. Eggs are not the problem. In fact, for most people, they may be one of the most supportive foods you can eat. So why does confusion still exist? Because outdated advice lingers far longer than outdated science. Medical textbooks change slowly. Nutrition guidelines move cautiously. And once fear is planted, it takes decades to uproot it. Another reason eggs remain confusing is that people rarely talk about context. Nutrition never exists in isolation. An egg eaten alongside vegetables and healthy fats behaves very differently in the body than an egg eaten with sugar, refined flour, and industrial oils. But instead of teaching context, people were given rules. Limit eggs. Avoid yolks. Eat egg whites only. Rules feel simple, but biology is not simple. And then there's the cholesterol myth, the biggest driver of egg fear. For years, people were told that eating cholesterol directly raises blood cholesterol. That belief seemed logical, but it ignored how the human body actually works. The body does not passively absorb cholesterol and let it pile up unchecked. It regulates it. When dietary cholesterol comes in, the liver produces less. When less comes in, the liver produces more. This feedback loop is fundamental human physiology. But that nuance was lost in public messaging. As a result, millions of people avoided one of the most nutrient-dense foods available, while unknowingly consuming the real drivers of metabolic disease: sugar, refined carbs, and inflammatory oils. The final layer of confusion comes from marketing and modern food labeling. Walk into any grocery store and you'll see egg cartons screaming for attention: cage-free, free-range, vegetarian, fed, natural, omega-3 enriched. Each label suggests health, safety, and superiority. But most people don't realize these labels often mean very little nutritionally. They create the illusion of choice without real education. So even people trying to do the right thing end up confused and overwhelmed before they even crack the shell. This is why eggs feel controversial when they shouldn't. Eggs are simple. The messaging around them is not. Doctors who study metabolism, brain health, muscle preservation, and longevity now recognize eggs as one of the most efficient nutrient delivery systems in nature. They contain complete protein, healthy fats, essential vitamins, and brain-supporting compounds in a form the body absorbs exceptionally well. Yet decades of outdated fear still cloud that reality. So before we answer how many eggs you can safely eat per day, something more important has to happen first. The confusion has to be cleared, the myths have to be exposed, and the science has to be separated from the noise. Because once you understand why eggs were misunderstood, everything else, cholesterol, quantity, quality, and daily intake, finally starts to make sense. Once people finally begin to question the old myths about eggs, they run into a new problem almost immediately: the grocery store egg aisle. It looks reassuring at first. Rows of cartons promise better health, better ethics, better nutrition, cage-free, free-range, vegetarian-fed, natural, omega-3 enriched, organic. The problem is not that these labels exist. The problem is that most people trust them without understanding what they actually mean. And this is where many well-intentioned people go wrong. Most egg labels are marketing before they are nutrition. They are designed to make you feel safe, not informed. Cage-free, for example, sounds like a major upgrade from conventional eggs. But legally, it simply means the hens are not kept in individual cages. They can still be crowded into large indoor barns with limited movement, artificial lighting, and grain-based feed. From a nutritional standpoint, cage-free eggs are often nearly identical to conventional eggs. Free-range sounds even better. The image most people picture is chickens roaming open fields, pecking grass and insects under the sun. But the legal definition of free-range is far less romantic. It usually means the hens have access to the outdoors, which can be as little as a small concrete patch or narrow door that many birds never use. The feed is often still dominated by corn and soy. Again, the nutritional difference is minimal. Then there is vegetarian-fed, a label that surprises many people once they learn the truth. Chickens are not vegetarians. In nature, they eat insects, worms, larvae, seeds, and plants. A vegetarian-fed label usually means the birds were fed a grain-heavy diet of corn and soy. This may appeal to human sensibilities, but it does not reflect a biologically appropriate diet for the animal, and it does not produce the most nutrient-dense eggs. The word natural might be the most misleading label of all. There is no strict scientific definition for a natural egg. It does not guarantee better nutrition, better animal welfare, or better farming practices. It simply sounds comforting. So, where does that leave people who genuinely want the healthiest eggs possible? This is where doctors and nutrition researchers increasingly agree on one standard: pasture-raised, ideally combined with organic practices. Pasture-raised eggs come from hens that spend most of their lives outdoors, moving freely on grass, exposed to sunlight, and eating a diet that includes insects and natural forage. This matters far more than most people realize. When a hen eats its natural diet and lives under natural light, the nutritional profile of the egg changes dramatically. Pasture-raised eggs consistently show higher levels of vitamin A, vitamin E, omega-3 fatty acids, zinc, selenium, choline, lutein, and zeaxanthin. They also contain meaningful amounts of vitamin K2, a nutrient associated with proper calcium placement in the body and cardiovascular health. In practical terms, a pasture-raised egg is almost a different food. The yolk is deeper in color. The fat composition is healthier, the micronutrient density is higher, and the biological value, how well your body can actually use what's inside, is superior. This is why studies that lump all eggs together often miss the point. Not all eggs are created equal. The difference between a low-quality egg and a high-quality egg is not subtle, it is foundational. Doctors who work with patients struggling with inflammation, metabolic issues, muscle loss, or brain health often see better outcomes when food quality improves, even when quantity stays the same. The body recognizes nutrient density. It responds differently when it receives complete, bioavailable nutrition rather than empty calories. And this brings us to an important correction. Eggs are not just protein. They are nutrient packages. When quality is poor, people may tolerate eggs without seeing much benefit. When quality is high, eggs often become one of the most effective foods in the diet for satiety, stable energy, cognitive support, and muscle maintenance. This is also why some people report feeling worse when eating eggs, while others feel fantastic. In many cases, the difference is not the egg itself. It is the quality of the egg and the context of the diet around it. A pasture-raised egg eaten alongside vegetables and healthy fats supports metabolism. A low-quality egg eaten with refined carbohydrates and industrial oils does not. The egg gets blamed, but it is not the culprit. Understanding egg quality clears up a massive amount of confusion. It explains why older studies produced mixed results. It explains why some people thrive on eggs while others feel uncertain. And it sets the foundation for the most important question of all, not whether eggs are healthy, but how many quality eggs your body can actually benefit from each day. At some point, every conversation about eggs runs headfirst into one word that has frightened people for decades: cholesterol. For many adults, especially those over 40 or 50, cholesterol feels like a loaded term. It has been associated with heart attacks, blocked arteries, and early death for so long that simply hearing it triggers anxiety. Eggs, because they contain cholesterol, were quickly labeled guilty by default. But this is where one of the greatest misunderstandings in modern nutrition took hold. The idea that eating cholesterol directly raises your blood cholesterol seems logical on the surface. Eat more cholesterol, blood cholesterol goes up. Eat less, it goes down. Simple, except the human body does not work that way, not even close. Your liver produces cholesterol every single day, roughly 3,000 milligrams, because cholesterol is essential for life. It is not a toxin, it is not waste. It is a repair molecule. Your body uses cholesterol to build cell membranes, produce hormones, create vitamin D, manufacture bile acids for digestion, support brain function, and repair damaged tissue. Without cholesterol, your body cannot function. Here is the critical point most people were never taught. When you eat cholesterol, your liver adjusts, it makes less. When you eat very little cholesterol, your liver makes more. This internal feedback system keeps blood cholesterol relatively stable in most people. It is tightly regulated biology, not a free-for-all. This is why modern research consistently shows that dietary cholesterol has little to no impact on blood cholesterol levels for the majority of the population. Eggs do not automatically raise LDL in healthy individuals. In fact, many studies show that eggs increase HDL, the so-called good cholesterol, which helps transport excess cholesterol away from blood vessels. So why were eggs blamed for heart disease for so long? Because cholesterol was misunderstood and because researchers were looking in the wrong place. What actually drives arterial damage is not cholesterol itself, but inflammation and oxidation. Cholesterol becomes involved only after damage has already occurred. When blood vessels are injured by high blood sugar, chronic stress, smoking, oxidized seed oils, or systemic inflammation, cholesterol shows up to repair the damage. Blaming cholesterol for that process is like blaming firefighters for showing up at a fire. Sugar, refined carbohydrates, and ultra-processed foods cause repeated spikes in blood glucose and insulin. These spikes damage the lining of blood vessels over time. Oxidized vegetable oils increase inflammation and oxidative stress. Chronic stress tightens blood vessels and disrupts lipid metabolism. These are the true drivers of cardiovascular disease, yet eggs were blamed because they were easy to target. Another important distinction rarely explained is that LDL itself is not inherently bad. LDL particles transport cholesterol through the bloodstream. The risk increases when LDL particles become small, dense, and oxidized, a process driven by poor diet, inflammation, and metabolic dysfunction. Eggs do not cause LDL oxidation. In many cases, they improve lipid profiles when they replace refined carbohydrates. This is why people who remove sugar and processed foods from their diet often see cholesterol markers improve, even when they eat eggs daily. The context matters far more than the cholesterol content of a single food. Doctors who work with metabolically healthy patients see this pattern repeatedly. When eggs are eaten as part of a whole foods diet, blood markers often stabilize or improve. When eggs are eaten alongside soda, pastries, processed meats, and industrial oils, the overall pattern of damage continues and eggs get blamed again. Another overlooked benefit of eggs is their role in supporting the liver. Eggs are one of the richest dietary sources of choline, a nutrient essential for fat metabolism and liver health. A choline-deficient liver struggles to process fats properly, which can worsen lipid profiles. In other words, eggs often help regulate cholesterol rather than disrupt it. This is especially important for older adults. As people age, the liver becomes less efficient, nutrient absorption declines, muscle mass decreases. Eggs provide complete protein, healthy fats, and choline in a form that is easy to digest and use. Removing eggs out of fear often leaves seniors undernourished, not protected. The cholesterol fear surrounding eggs did not come from malicious intent. It came from incomplete science, oversimplified messaging, and decades of repeating the same warning without re-examining it. Unfortunately, many people still live under that shadow today, avoiding a food that could actually support their health. Once cholesterol is properly understood, eggs stop looking dangerous and start looking logical. They are not artery-clogging bombs. They are biologically appropriate nutrition that the human body has consumed for thousands of years. And once that fear is removed, the most important question finally becomes possible to answer clearly, not whether eggs are safe, but how many eggs your individual body can benefit from each day. After decades of confusion, fear, and conflicting headlines, this is the moment everyone wants clarity, not theories. Not extremes, just the honest answer. How many eggs can you safely eat per day? And the truth doctors now explain is far more reasonable and far more empowering than most people expect. The first thing to understand is that there is no single number that applies to every human being. Nutrition never works that way. Your age, activity level, metabolic health, inflammation status, and overall diet all matter. But once those factors are considered, the range becomes surprisingly generous. For the average healthy adult with no major metabolic issues, modern research consistently shows that 2 to 3 eggs per day is not only safe, but often beneficial. This amount provides high-quality, complete protein, healthy fats, choline for brain and liver health, and fat-soluble vitamins that many adults are deficient in. At this intake, eggs support satiety, stable energy, and muscle maintenance without negatively affecting cholesterol markers in most people. For many adults, especially those who eat a low-sugar, whole foods diet, that number can comfortably increase. Pushing to 3 or even 4 eggs per day often improves nutrient intake rather than harms it. People frequently report better energy, fewer cravings, and improved muscle tone when eggs replace processed breakfast foods. Highly active individuals and athletes represent another category entirely. Their bodies are in a constant state of repair. Muscles are breaking down and rebuilding daily. For them, 3 to 6 eggs per day can be an efficient, bioavailable protein source that supports recovery and strength. Eggs provide amino acids in a ratio the human body uses extremely well, which is why they are often called the reference protein. Metabolically healthy adults with stable blood work often tolerate this higher range without issue. In fact, in low-inflammation diets, eggs can improve lipid profiles by raising HDL and supporting satiety, which reduces overeating later in the day. Older adults deserve special attention here. After the age of 50 or 60, muscle loss becomes a serious threat to independence. Sarcopenia does not happen overnight. It happens quietly, year by year, when protein intake and nutrient absorption decline. Eggs are one of the easiest proteins for older adults to digest and use. For most seniors, 2 to 3 eggs per day is a highly effective strategy for preserving muscle, supporting balance, and maintaining strength. Many doctors now encourage eggs specifically for aging populations because of their nutrient density and digestibility. People with type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance often worry about eggs, but eggs contain virtually no carbohydrates and do not raise blood sugar. In fact, they often stabilize blood glucose by reducing hunger and preventing spikes from refined carbs. For these individuals, 1 to 2 eggs per day is an excellent starting point, with 3 being well tolerated when the overall diet is low in sugar and processed foods. Those concerned about high cholesterol are often the most surprised. In most people, 1 to 2 eggs per day shows no increased cardiovascular risk. The critical factor is not the egg, but the environment it enters. When sugar, refined carbs, and industrial oils dominate the diet, cholesterol markers worsen regardless of egg intake. When those drivers are removed, eggs rarely cause harm and often support better metabolic balance. Then there are the extreme examples, people eating 6, 8, even 10 eggs per day. Yes, they exist, and many of them thrive. The common thread among these individuals is not the egg count. It is the absence of the real dietary offenders. They eliminate sugar, processed foods, and inflammatory oils. In that context, eggs become fuel, not stress. That said, this is not a prescription for everyone. There are exceptions. People with rare genetic lipid disorders, confirmed egg allergies, or specific digestive issues may need a personalized approach. But these cases are the minority, not the rule. The biggest mistake people make is asking, how many eggs are too many? Instead of asking, what is my body doing with the eggs I eat? Quality, preparation, and overall diet matter more than an isolated number. Once fear is removed and context is restored, eggs stop being a problem to manage and start becoming a tool to use. They are not something to tiptoe around. They are something to understand. And once you understand how many eggs your body can actually handle, the final piece becomes clear: how to eat them in a way that protects your health instead of undermining it. By this point, one thing should be clear: eggs are not the villain they were once made out to be. For most people, they are safe, supportive, and deeply nourishing. But responsible medical guidance is never about absolutes. There are certain situations where caution matters, not because eggs are harmful by default, but because individual biology always comes first. The first and most obvious group is people with a true egg allergy. This is not intolerance, discomfort, or fear. This is a medically confirmed immune reaction. In these cases, eggs are simply not appropriate. This group is small, but for them, avoidance is necessary. Another group that deserves attention is people with rare genetic lipid disorders such as familial hypercholesterolemia. This condition affects how the body regulates cholesterol internally. It is uncommon, but when present, dietary cholesterol can behave differently. For these individuals, egg intake should be guided by a knowledgeable physician who understands lipid metabolism beyond outdated cholesterol charts. There are also people who have had their gallbladder removed or who struggle with fat digestion. Eggs contain healthy fats, but if bile flow is impaired, even healthy fats can cause discomfort at first. In these cases, starting slowly matters. 1 egg per day, eaten mindfully, allows the digestive system to adapt. Many people find they tolerate eggs better over time as digestion improves. Some individuals are sensitive to histamines. Eggs themselves are not extremely high in histamines, but improper storage, reheating, or overcooking can increase histamine load. For these people, freshness matters. Cooking eggs gently and eating them immediately often makes a significant difference. Beyond these specific cases, the question is no longer whether eggs are safe, it becomes how to eat them in a way that preserves their benefits. The way eggs are cooked changes their impact dramatically. Eggs are rich in healthy fats, but fats are sensitive to heat. When eggs are cooked gently, the fats remain stable and supportive. When they are cooked aggressively at very high temperatures, those fats can oxidize, turning a nourishing food into a less favorable one. This is why the healthiest eggs are those with soft, golden yolks rather than dry, gray, or crumbly ones. A soft yolk preserves fat-soluble vitamins and minimizes oxidation. Gentle cooking methods allow the nutrients to remain intact and bioavailable. Equally important is what eggs are cooked with. Traditional fats like butter or olive oil, used at low to moderate heat, support stability. Industrial vegetable oils, on the other hand, are highly prone to oxidation when heated. Cooking eggs in these oils introduces inflammatory compounds that have nothing to do with the egg itself, yet the egg often gets blamed for the consequences. Context matters just as much as technique. Eggs eaten alongside vegetables, greens, or whole foods behave very differently in the body than eggs eaten with refined bread, sugar, and processed meats. When eggs are paired with fiber and micronutrients, blood sugar stays stable, satiety improves, and inflammation remains lower. When they are paired with ultra-processed foods, the metabolic environment worsens, and again, eggs take the blame. One of the most overlooked aspects of egg consumption is how well they support appetite regulation. Eggs signal fullness to the brain more effectively than most breakfast foods. This reduces snacking, stabilizes energy, and prevents overeating later in the day. Many people who fear eggs unknowingly replace them with foods that disrupt blood sugar and increase inflammation. For older adults, this matters even more. Skipping eggs out of fear often leads to inadequate protein intake, worsening muscle loss and weakness. In this population, eggs are not a luxury. They are a strategic tool for maintaining strength, balance, and independence. The final truth doctors want people to understand is simple. Eggs did not become unhealthy overnight. Humans have eaten them for thousands of years. What changed was the surrounding diet, the cooking methods, the quality of food, and the narratives built around them. When eggs are high quality, prepared gently, and eaten in a supportive dietary context, they are one of the most efficient sources of nutrition available. When fear is removed and understanding takes its place, eggs stop being controversial and start being practical. And that is the real conclusion. Eggs are not something to obsess over or avoid out of habit. They are something to use wisely. When you respect your individual biology, choose quality, and prepare them properly, eggs become exactly what nature intended them to be: simple, nourishing, and supportive of long-term health. That clarity is what allows people to stop guessing, stop fearing, and start eating with confidence again.